A massive earthwork sits silently in an empty landscape, its builders completely unknown. This is the profound mystery of enormous earthworks with no traceable cultural identity, a puzzle that challenges everything we think we know about ancient peoples. By the end of this exploration, you will understand how entire civilizations can vanish, leaving only the land itself to tell their story. We will investigate why a society capable of moving mountains of earth would leave no name behind, and what these silent giants reveal about the fragility of human memory. What does it mean for a people to be so thoroughly forgotten? A giant serpent of earth uncoils across the Ohio landscape, its silent form stretching for hundreds of meters. In the English countryside, a massive circular bank and ditch stand in perfect geometric harmony. These are earthworks, monuments built not from quarried stone but from the land itself. They are human-made structures created by moving and shaping vast quantities of soil, clay, and rock. They range from simple burial mounds to complex animal effigies and enormous ceremonial enclosures that can cover areas larger than modern stadiums. Their organic nature, built directly from the earth they sit upon, makes their enduring presence both compelling and deeply mysterious. They are a form of landscape architecture on a truly grand scale. This was a deliberate, labor-intensive transformation of the environment, a reshaping of the world to fit a vision. To accomplish this required more than just vast numbers of people. It demanded a sophisticated understanding of geometry to lay out such precise shapes over immense distances. It required knowledge of astronomy to align these structures with solstices and lunar cycles. Most importantly, it necessitated a highly organized society, one capable of planning, feeding, and motivating a workforce for generations. These were not the acts of small, isolated bands of people. They were the projects of a complex culture with shared beliefs and goals. Yet, for so many of these magnificent sites, the people who dreamed them into existence have vanished completely. Their names, their language, their stories, all are lost to a chasm of time and severed cultural continuity. Understanding the sheer scale and intelligence behind these earthworks is the first step. It forces us to ask who were these master builders and what profound purpose drove them to move mountains of earth, only to disappear without a trace. This pattern of forgotten builders stretches across the entire planet, deep within the Amazon rainforest, hidden for centuries under dense canopy, are enormous geometric earthworks known as geoglyphs. These are vast ditches and banks forming perfect circles and squares, their scale only visible from the air. Far to the north, in what is now Louisiana, the Poverty Point complex rises from the land. It is a series of massive, concentric, C-shaped earthen ridges with a central plaza and several large mounds, all built by a society that left no written record. Crossing the Atlantic, we find Silbury Hill in England, an artificial chalk mound so enormous it contains the same volume of material as some of the smaller Egyptian pyramids. Its reason for being is a complete enigma, and in France, the Karnak stones, while made of towering granite monoliths instead of earth, share the same mysterious quality. Thousands of these stones stand in eerily straight lines for kilometers, erected by a people whose name and language are lost to us. This global tapestry tells us something profound. The drive to reshape the world on a monumental scale, to leave a permanent mark upon the land, appears to be a fundamental human impulse. It arose independently in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. Yet for so many of these ambitious societies, their greatest legacy is a silent one. Their cultural identity, the very thing that bound them together and gave their work meaning, was eventually erased by time, conflict, or absorption into new peoples. This recurring loss forces a humbling question. How does an entire culture, capable of such immense and coordinated effort, simply vanish from memory, leaving only its earthbound signature behind? A serpent of Earth, over 1,300 feet long, rests on an Ohio plateau, its coils forever frozen in motion. This is the Great Serpent Mound, a breathtaking effigy whose open jaws seem to swallow a giant egg-shaped formation. The precision of its construction is staggering, with the serpent's head perfectly aligned with the summer solstice sunset, suggesting its builders possessed deep astronomical knowledge. For generations, scholars believed the Adena culture, known for their burial mounds, were the artists behind this earthen masterpiece. But then, more advanced dating techniques introduced a compelling twist, pointing instead to the fort ancient culture, a people who flourished centuries later. This single site now stands at the heart of a scholarly tug of war, its true creators lost between two different and poorly understood cultures. Was this massive serpent a celestial calendar, marking the passage of seasons with its sinuous body? Was it a sacred space for spiritual ceremonies, a territorial marker for a powerful community, or a representation of a great mythological beast from a forgotten oral tradition? The mound itself holds its secrets tightly, offering no written records, only the silent, imposing question of its form. This profound ambiguity is the very essence of the mystery. Here we have one of the most spectacular earthworks on the planet, a testament to immense effort and visionary planning, and yet we cannot say with certainty which hands shaped its curves. The debate over its origin does not simplify the puzzle, it deepens it, forcing us to acknowledge how little we truly know about the peoples who once called this land home. The Great Serpent Mound exemplifies the core problem, a magnificent structure without a definitive cultural signature, a monumental question mark written in soil and stone. The silence of Poverty Point is almost as immense as its construction. This sprawling complex in northeastern Louisiana is not a single mound but an entire planned landscape, a testament to a forgotten societal vision. Built around 3,700 years ago, its central feature is a set of 6 concentric, C-shaped earthen ridges towering over a vast central plaza. From the air, the design resembles a giant, segmented amphitheater facing a bayou. The labor involved is almost incomprehensible. To build this, the people moved over 1,500,000 cubic meters of earth, basketful by heavy basketful, without the use of draft animals or the wheel. This was not a haphazard effort. It was a coordinated, multi-generational project that required a sophisticated social structure to plan, feed, and direct the workforce. The artifacts unearthed here tell a story of far-reaching connections. Spear points crafted from chert sourced from modern-day Mississippi and Arkansas, and beautiful decorative objects made from stones found only in the Great Lakes region, hundreds of miles away. This was clearly a major hub, a place where distant peoples gathered not just for ceremony, but for commerce and exchange. Yet, for all its grandeur and its clear importance as a regional center, the builders left no written language, no decipherable record of their name for themselves. Archaeologists simply call them the Poverty Point culture, a label that speaks more to our modern ignorance than their ancient identity. They seem to have vanished as a distinct people, leaving no clear cultural descendants. Their grand earthworks stand as a monument to a society whose name, language, and ultimate fate are lost to us. This scale of achievement forces a fundamental question. What kind of leadership, what shared belief or common goal could possibly orchestrate such a monumental and enduring transformation of the land? the paradox of their achievement is almost unbelievable. These builders moved mountains of earth without metal tools to cut the soil, without wheels to transport it, and without animals to pull the heavy loads. Every single basket of soil was carried on a human back. Their tools were simple, crafted from bone, wood, and stone. A digging stick could break the ground, a shoulder could bear the weight of a woven basket, and a determined community could move the world. At a place like Poverty Point, the effort becomes even more intricate. Researchers have found that the soil itself was carefully selected, brought in from different locations to create distinct colored layers within the mounds. This was not a random act of piling dirt. It was a deliberate, symbolic layering of the landscape, perhaps meant to represent different worlds or to infuse the structure with specific spiritual meaning. This immense labor was almost certainly a communal act. Imagine the scene not as one of grim toil, but as a powerful social and spiritual gathering. It might have coincided with seasonal festivals, a time when scattered groups came together to reaffirm their shared identity through a shared task. The rhythmic work of digging, carrying, and building would have been accompanied by ceremony, song, and storytelling. In this light, the construction process itself was as important as the final structure. It was a living ritual that bound the community together, a physical demonstration of their collective strength and shared beliefs. Yet this communal effort required a guiding intelligence. The breathtaking precision of so many earthworks reveals the presence of true specialists. Someone had to possess the knowledge to lay out a perfect circle hundreds of meters across, or to align a mound's crest with the rising sun on the solstice. These were the ancient world's engineers and astronomers, individuals who could observe the heavens, calculate complex geometries, and direct a workforce to turn that vision into a permanent feature of the Earth. This creates a profound puzzle. How did a culture without a recognizable written language develop such sophisticated knowledge? And more importantly, how did they pass it down perfectly from one generation to the next? The answers must have resided in a rich oral tradition, in songs, dances, and stories that meticulously preserved this sacred geometry and astronomy. The loss of that living cultural knowledge is the true depth of the tragedy. We can see the shadow of their genius in the alignments of their earthworks, but the stories that gave those alignments meaning are gone forever. The methods of construction show us a society capable of incredible organization and profound intellectual achievement, making their ultimate disappearance from history all the more haunting. The soil itself becomes a clock, its massive ridges and mounds pointing toward the celestial dance above. This deep connection to the heavens is etched into the very landscape of these ancient sites. Far from being simple piles of earth, many functioned as sophisticated calendars and observatories, their alignments marking the solstices and equinoxes with breathtaking precision. At the Cahokia Mounds near modern-day St. Louis, a structure known as Woodhenge once stood. It was not a circle of stone, but a vast ring of towering wooden posts. On the morning of the equinox, an observer standing at the circle's center would have seen the sun rise directly over a key post, signaling the moment of balance between day and night. This was not merely an intellectual exercise. Predicting the turning of the seasons was a matter of survival. Knowing precisely when to plant crops, when to harvest, and when to prepare for the lean months of winter was essential for the community's well-being. This celestial knowledge was almost certainly woven into the fabric of their spiritual life and social rituals. The first day of spring or the longest day of summer would have been occasions for great gatherings, ceremonies that reinforced social bonds and honored the cycles of nature. This reveals a society of sky watchers, individuals who spent generations meticulously observing the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, then encoding that hard-won knowledge into the permanent features of the Earth. They achieved a level of astronomical understanding that rivals many old-world cultures. How could a people who possessed such a masterful grasp of the cosmos, who could literally build their calendar into the horizon, vanish so completely that we struggle to even name them? Their silent, earth-bound observatories stand as a testament to a brilliant, integrated worldview, one where the earthly and the celestial were inseparable. This profound connection hints at a spiritual dimension to these places, a purpose that transcended mere timekeeping and touched the very soul of their culture. For centuries, the Amazon was seen as a vast, untouched wilderness, a place where complex societies could never have taken root. Then the trees began to fall, and the earth revealed its secrets. From the air, a new and startling landscape emerged, one of perfect geometric forms etched into the ground. Across a region the size of a small country, hundreds of enormous squares, circles, and lines were carved into the clay soil. These are the Amazonian geoglyphs, and their discovery shattered a long-held myth. This was not a pristine wilderness, but a managed, engineered landscape, the work of a society that flourished here more than 2,000 years ago. The sheer number and scale of these earthworks point to a population far larger and more organized than anyone had previously believed possible in this environment. They were not small, nomadic tribes, but a people capable of large-scale land transformation. The purpose of these enigmatic shapes remains a subject of intense debate. Were they ceremonial enclosures, places where communities gathered for rituals that strengthened their shared identity? The intricate designs, best appreciated from an elevated view, suggest a deep symbolic meaning. Or were they practical structures, serving as defensive earthworks or sophisticated systems for managing the seasonal floods and droughts of the rainforest? They may have served all these purposes at once, their meaning shifting with the needs of the people and the turning of the seasons. The most profound mystery, however, lies not in their function, but in their makers. This culture appears to have risen, built its monumental landscape, and then vanished, all long before European ships ever appeared on the horizon. They left behind no pottery styles that clearly linked to later peoples, no oral histories that remember their name. They are a true lost civilization of the Amazon, their identity completely severed from the indigenous cultures of the region today. These silent geometric clearings force a complete re-evaluation of the Americas. They tell a story of human innovation and environmental management on a grand scale, a story that was successfully hidden by the forest for millennia. What other profound chapters of human history lie buried, not under sand or stone, but simply waiting beneath the living green canopy of the world? For generations, the true story of the Mounds was buried under a different kind of earth, a heavy layer of misconception and political motive. When European settlers first pushed into the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, they stood before these colossal earthworks and concluded they were looking at the work of a lost, superior race. The sheer scale and sophistication of the structures seemed to contradict their own narrow views of the indigenous peoples they were encountering. This gave rise to a powerful and persistent fiction, the mound builder myth. This story claimed the real architects were not Native Americans, but a vanished civilization of Vikings, Phoenicians, or even a lost tribe of Israel, who had supposedly been wiped out by the very people now living there. This was not just an innocent mistake. It was a convenient narrative, one used to justify the displacement of native communities by portraying them as recent arrivals who could not possibly have a deep ancestral claim to the land. If they were not the descendants of the brilliant builders, the logic went, then their connection to the territory was less valid. This deliberate misreading of the landscape had devastating real-world consequences, severing living peoples from their own profound heritage. The long process of correcting this error began in earnest in the late 19th century, led by researchers like Cyrus Thomas of the Smithsonian Institution. Through meticulous excavation and analysis, his team systematically gathered evidence that connected the mounds directly to the ancestors of contemporary Native American tribes. They demonstrated that the tools, pottery, and burial practices found within the earthworks were part of a continuous cultural thread. This was a vital scientific and ethical correction, a necessary step in returning a stolen history. Yet, solving one mystery often reveals another. While we now correctly attribute these works to broad indigenous cultures, the specific identities of the builders are still shrouded in time. Knowing that the Hopewell tradition built a particular complex is a start, but it does not tell us what they called themselves, the nuances of their language, or the specific stories they told about the serpent they shaped into a hillside. The correction of the mound builder myth rectified a great historical wrong, but it also left us with a more subtle and profound silence, the whisper of individual cultures whose unique voices are still waiting to be heard. The scale of Monk's Mound is difficult to grasp until you stand before it. This colossal platform of earth rises 100 feet high, covering more ground than the Great Pyramid of Giza at its base. It was the beating heart of a city, a place where leaders resided and ceremonies that united thousands were performed. From its summit, the view would have stretched across a bustling urban landscape, a true metropolis with a population rivaling that of London at the same time. This was Cahokia, North America's first city, a sprawling center of power and culture. Its skyline was defined not by stone towers but by over 120 earthen mounds arranged around vast, open plazas. The society that flourished here was one of stunning complexity. Artisans crafted beautiful shell ornaments and finely tooled copper plates, goods that were traded across half the continent. The organization required to feed and govern a community of up to 20,000 people speaks to a highly structured society with a clear social hierarchy. We call this the Mississippian culture, but that name is a modern convenience, an archaeological label for a widespread and diverse network of peoples. The true name of the city, the language spoken in its bustling markets, the specific stories told by its firesides are all silent. Then, around the 14th century, the city emptied. The great plazas fell quiet, and the mounds were left to the elements. Why would a society so powerful, so apparently secure, simply walk away from its greatest creation? The reasons are still pieced together from subtle clues in the soil. Perhaps the land could no longer support such a dense population, its resources depleted by centuries of intensive farming and construction. Maybe shifts in climate patterns disrupted the crucial growing seasons, leading to hardship. Or perhaps the social contract that held the city together began to fray, giving way to internal conflict. It was likely a cascade of interconnected challenges, a perfect storm of environmental and social pressures that led to a gradual dispersal. The people did not vanish from the earth, but they did vanish from this place, their grand urban experiment left behind. Cahokia stands as a powerful testament to the fact that complexity and monumentality are no guarantee of permanence. A society capable of moving millions of baskets of earth to build a city could not ultimately command its own future, leaving its silent mounds to tell a story of both magnificent achievement and profound fragility. Rising from the green fields of Wiltshire, Silbury Hill is a perfect grass-covered cone of stunning geometric precision. For a structure so enormous, its purpose is a perfect blank. This is not a tomb, for no burial chamber lies within its chalk heart. It is not a fortress, nor does it contain any hidden structure at its core. It appears to be, quite simply, a monumental pile of earth and chalk, meticulously layered and shaped over generations. The scale of the labor is almost beyond modern comprehension. To build it, the people of the Neolithic quarried, moved, and shaped an estimated 18 million man-hours of material. That is a volume of work that rivals the Great Pyramids of Egypt, which were being constructed at nearly the same time on another continent. This was not a project of years, but of decades, perhaps even centuries, a sustained act of will that spanned countless human lifetimes. What could possibly justify such an immense and prolonged investment of a society's energy and resources? The hill sits within a sacred landscape, a neighborhood of mysteries that includes the sprawling stone circles of Avebury and the ancient communal tomb of the West Kennet Long Barrow. It was clearly part of a larger ceremonial whole, a critical piece of a spiritual map we can no longer read. Perhaps it was a symbolic representation of a world mountain, an axis linking the earth to the heavens. Maybe its very construction was the point, a continuous ritual act that bound the community together through the shared, sacred labor of building. The individuals who conceived of this giant, who directed its flawless shape and oversaw its painstaking assembly, are utterly anonymous to us. We label their era the Neolithic, but that is a crude and broad brushstroke for a culture capable of such a focused and visionary project. They left no written language to explain their motives, no carvings to depict their ceremonies. Silbury Hill stands as the ultimate monument to a collective will, a shared purpose so powerful it could move a mountain, yet so fragile that its meaning evaporated from human memory. Its silent, imposing presence forces a humbling realization. Some ancient truths, some core motivations that drove entire societies, may be fundamentally inaccessible to us, lost forever in the chasm of severed time. Across the stark plains of the Peruvian desert, a giant spider seems to crawl across the earth, its thin legs stretching for dozens of meters. A hummingbird with a long, graceful beak hovers eternally over the dry soil. These are the Nazca lines, a gallery of colossal art etched directly into the desert floor, created by removing the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored sand beneath. These are not mounds built up, but images carved down. They are geoglyphs, and their scale is so immense that the full form of a monkey or a whale can only be comprehended from high above. This fact alone has fueled countless speculative theories, from ancient alien runways to complex landing beacons for gods. The reality, grounded in archaeology, is both more knowable and in some ways just as mysterious. We know exactly who made these lines. It was the Nazca people, a sophisticated culture that thrived in this arid region for over 1,000 years. They left behind beautiful polychrome pottery and intricate textiles, evidence of a rich artistic tradition. Their cultural identity is not lost to us in the same way as the builders of Poverty Point. Yet, they left no written language to explain why they invested such staggering effort into creating these vast drawings, visible only from a perspective they could never physically achieve. This shifts the entire nature of the mystery. It is no longer a question of who, but a profound puzzle of why. What vision compelled an entire culture to organize the labor for clearing kilometers of lines, forming perfect triangles and trapezoids, and outlining giant condors? The most compelling theories connect the lines to the most precious resource in this desert landscape, water. Some of the long, straight lines align with underground aquifers, while many of the figures are linked to ceremonial sites. Perhaps these pathways were ritual walkways, used in ceremonies to plead with water deities or to honor the celestial forces that govern the rare rains. The act of walking the lines, of tracing the form of a spider believed to bring rain, may have been a powerful spiritual practice. the lines could also have functioned as a giant astronomical calendar, their alignments marking the rising and setting of the sun and stars to signal the changing seasons and the timing for planting. The truth likely wove these purposes together. The immense labor itself, the communal act of clearing and maintaining the lines generation after generation, would have reinforced social bonds and cultural identity. It was a way of writing their beliefs upon the land itself, a permanent prayer for survival in a harsh world. The ultimate irony is that this prayer, this massive investment of meaning, is now silent. We can see the words, but we have lost the language to read them. The Nazca lines demonstrate that even when we know the name of the builders, their deepest intentions can vanish just as completely as if they were anonymous, leaving behind a breathtaking but silent testament to a forgotten worldview. The silence of these places today stands in stark contrast to their vibrant past. It is almost universally accepted that ritual and ceremony were the very lifeblood flowing through these earthen veins. Picture, if you will, the scene at a place like Cahokia during a solstice gathering. Thousands of people would have filled the central plaza, their voices rising in unison during ceremonies that marked the turning of the year. The air thick with the scent of cooking fires and ceremonial herbs, the rhythm of drums echoing from the massive face of Monk's Mound. These were not just construction sites, they were theaters of belief. The act of building itself may have been the most profound ritual of all. The coordinated labor of moving earth, basket by basket, was not merely a task. It was a physical prayer, a shared endeavor that strengthened community bonds and demonstrated their collective devotion to a common cause. This transforms our understanding of these monuments from passive architecture into active, living processes. The earthworks served as sacred intermediaries, connecting the community to the land, the ancestors, and the spiritual world. A serpent mound might have been seen as a representation of a great creator spirit, its coils holding the power of the earth itself. The perfect circles of an enclosure could have been envisioned as a boundary between our world and the next, a place where communication with the unseen was possible. These spaces gave physical form to a culture's deepest cosmological beliefs, making the abstract tangible. This spiritual dimension is the key to understanding their immense cultural importance, yet it is also the aspect most fragile and vulnerable to being lost. When a culture disperses or is absorbed by another, its specific rituals, its unique prayers, and the nuanced stories of its gods are often the first elements to fade. The earthworks remain as the physical skeleton, the durable bones of a rich spiritual life that has otherwise completely evaporated. We are left with the grand stage, but the play that was performed upon it, the lines spoken, and the emotions felt, are echoes we can no longer hear. What profound truths about the human relationship with the cosmos were once celebrated in these earthen arenas? The structures endure, but the meaning that animated them is a ghost, leaving us with a profound sense of what is missing. The grand plazas and towering mounds did not empty overnight. Their abandonment was not a single event, but a slow, quiet unraveling. Without evidence of catastrophic invasion or sudden destruction, we are left to piece together a more subtle and complex story of decline. The most persistent theory points to the land itself. A series of prolonged droughts lasting for decades could have pushed a sophisticated agricultural system to its breaking point. When the rains failed year after year, the land that once supported a city of thousands might no longer yield enough. Similarly, centuries of intensive farming could have exhausted the soil, silently draining its vitality until it could no longer sustain the population it had helped to create. This environmental pressure would have created a slow-burning crisis, a gradual tightening that forced communities to make difficult choices. Alongside these physical challenges, the social fabric that held these societies together may have begun to fray. The very hierarchies that organized the monumental labor, the shared beliefs that motivated it, could have become sources of tension. What if the central authority, once respected, lost its legitimacy? Internal conflict over dwindling resources or shifting religious ideals could have led people to question the old ways. The social contract, that unwritten agreement to work together for a common good, may have simply broken down. In this light, abandonment begins to look less like a failure and more like a rational response. Faced with an untenable situation, people did what humans have always done: they adapted. They may have dispersed into smaller, more mobile family groups, migrating to new territories and gradually blending with other cultures. Over generations, their distinct identity, their unique language and traditions would have slowly dissolved into the wider tapestry of neighboring peoples. This process of cultural merging, while a practical survival strategy, ultimately led to the silence we encounter today. The empty earthworks, therefore, stand as a profound lesson in humility. They are not merely monuments to what was built, but also to what was lost. They remind us that civilizations are not defined by their stone and earth, but by the fragile, living bonds of shared purpose that hold them together, bonds that can, over time, quietly come undone. The stories that could have explained these silent giants were never written down, but carried in the living memory of generations. For countless cultures, the primary library was not one of parchment and ink, but of spoken word. Elaborate oral traditions, passed meticulously from elder to youth through stories, songs, and ceremonial chants, served as the durable threads connecting a people to their past. It is entirely possible that the original purpose of the Great Serpent Mound, the precise rituals of Cahokia, and the astronomical secrets of the Amazonian geoglyphs were preserved in this way for hundreds of years. This knowledge was not simply information, it was a sacred trust, a way of keeping the world in balance by remembering how it began. Then came a rupture so profound it severed these threads across a continent. The arrival of European colonizers brought waves of unfamiliar illness that decimated communities, taking with them the revered knowledge keepers. It introduced violent conflict and policies of forced assimilation that actively suppressed native languages and ceremonies. In this cultural cataclysm, entire libraries of oral history, entire ways of understanding the world, vanished in the space of a few generations. The specific song that explained the serpent's coils, the specific story that detailed the founding of the great city, these were likely lost forever. This creates a profound and respectful challenge for understanding today. While many contemporary indigenous groups maintain deep spiritual and ancestral connections to these sites, the direct, unbroken line of knowledge from the original builders is often fractured. What remains are precious fragments, sometimes reinterpreted through the lens of later experiences or blended with new traditions. The earthworks now exist in a silent space between what archaeology can deduce from the soil and what living memory can recall. They are monuments caught between two different ways of knowing, their deepest truths resting just beyond our collective grasp. The ground itself is now beginning to speak, not through shovels but through silent pulses of light. Modern archaeology has traded excavation for remote sensing, using technologies that allow us to see through dense forest canopies and deep into the soil without ever breaking the surface. LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, is perhaps the most revolutionary of these tools. Mounted on aircraft, it fires millions of laser pulses toward the ground, precisely measuring their return. By digitally stripping away the trees, it reveals the ghostly imprint of ancient landscapes below. What appears as a simple, rolling hill to the human eye is suddenly revealed by LiDAR as a perfectly geometrical platform mound. What seems like an empty field transforms into the clear outline of a vast ceremonial enclosure. This technology is rewriting the map of the ancient world, showing us that these earthworks were far more numerous and interconnected than we ever dreamed. But the investigation does not stop there. Ground-penetrating radar sends energy pulses into the Earth, painting a picture of what lies buried, detecting the echoes of old post holes, hearths, and storage pits. Meanwhile, radiocarbon dating analyzes traces of ancient charcoal or bone to anchor these structures to a specific century. Even the chemistry of the soil is a historical record, holding the invisible signature of human activity, showing us where people gathered, cooked, or conducted ceremonies. We can now understand the how and the when with stunning clarity, reconstructing the sequence of construction and the staggering scale of the labor. Yet, for all this technological power, the most profound questions linger in the silence. Science can map the footprint of a society, but it cannot recover its name. It can date a post hole, but it cannot hear the story told beside it. It can reveal the geometry of a plaza, but it cannot translate the prayer that was spoken there. We are left with an incredibly detailed skeleton of a lost culture, its bones laid bare by laser and radar, but the spirit that animated it, the breath of its language and the warmth of its shared identity, remains a whisper just beyond our reach. We give them names to make the past manageable, but these labels are our own inventions. Archaeologists define a culture by what it left behind, grouping together sites that share a distinct style of pottery, a particular way of crafting stone tools, or a common approach to honoring their departed. The Adena culture is one such name, applied to a people who built conical burial mounds across the Ohio Valley. The Hopewell interaction sphere is another, describing a vast network of communities connected by trade and shared ceremonial practices. These categories are essential tools, allowing researchers to create a rough map of a continent without written history. Yet these names are modern conveniences, archaeological shorthand that can never capture the living, breathing reality of a people. The individuals we call the Hopewell did not wake up and think of themselves as part of an interaction sphere. They had their own name for their people, a word for themselves that is now lost to time. The labels we use create a comforting illusion of clarity, neatly boxing ancient societies into defined territories and time periods. The truth was almost certainly far more fluid and dynamic. Alliances between communities would have shifted, families migrated, and new ideas spread like ripples across the land, blending traditions and creating new cultural expressions. A single, massive earthwork might represent the cooperative effort of several distinct villages, each with its own leaders and slight variations in custom, all united by a common spiritual goal. When we look at the great geometric enclosures of the Hopewell, we are not seeing the monument of a single, monolithic culture. We are likely seeing a grand project that brought together many different communities for a shared purpose. The name we assign to the earthwork smooths over this rich tapestry of individual identities and local histories. It allows us to talk about the builders, but in doing so, it inadvertently anonymizes the very people we are trying to understand. We know the culture by its artifacts, but we know nothing of the individual who painted a specific pot, or the visionary who first laid out the perfect octagon. This is the core challenge of cultural attribution. Our systems for organizing the past, while necessary, can sometimes build a wall between us and the humanity of those who came before. The earthworks stand as a powerful reminder that a society is not a single, simple entity, but a complex chorus of countless individual voices, nearly all of which have been silenced by the passage of centuries. A colossal mound looming on the horizon was more than a sacred site. It was a declaration written in earth. In a world without fences or surveyor's stakes, these monumental structures served as unmistakable territorial markers, broadcasting a community's presence and power across the landscape. The sheer scale of an earthwork was a public demonstration of a leader's ability to command labor, a clear signal of social cohesion and organizational strength. To approach a complex like the Great Mounds of Cahokia was to approach the seat of an authority that could literally move mountains. This was a border you could not ignore, a permanent symbol of control over the land and its vital resources, from fertile hunting grounds to river trade routes. The immense effort invested begins to make profound sense when viewed through this lens. A larger, more complex earthwork was not just a spiritual center, it was a louder, more undeniable statement to neighboring groups. It communicated stability, wealth, and the collective will to defend what was theirs. It was a message for both allies and potential rivals, a way of solidifying identity and asserting a right to the territory. Yet this theory reveals a deep irony of history. When the power structure that built the mound eventually faded, when the community dispersed or was absorbed by newcomers, the message carved into the land became garbled. The symbol of authority remained, physically imposing and eternally visible, but the specific identity it proclaimed, the name of the chief, the story of the people, all faded into silence. We are left staring at a powerful, permanent declaration, but one whose language we can no longer decipher. The earthwork stands as a mute testament to a forgotten claim, a border that now contains only echoes. These geometric earthworks were not isolated monuments. They were hubs in a continent-spanning network of exchange that we now call the Hopewell interaction sphere. For over 700 years, this vibrant network connected communities across half of North America, from the shores of the Gulf of Mexico to the northern forests of the Great Lakes, and as far west as the Rocky Mountains. The true genius of the Hopewell was not in conquering territory, but in building connections. Their great earthworks, those perfect circles and octagons, served as ceremonial gathering places where people from distant lands would come together. They were neutral, sacred grounds for trade, alliance-making, and the sharing of ideas and rituals. The objects found buried within these mounds tell a breathtaking story of travel and connection. Imagine a ceremonial leader in Ohio wearing a headdress adorned with grizzly bear teeth from the distant Rockies. Picture a cache of beautifully carved obsidian knives, their volcanic glass sourced from the mountains of Wyoming, over 2,000 kilometers away. Consider the shimmer of copper from Lake Superior, painstakingly hammered into elaborate breastplates and ear spools, or the iridescent glow of shells carried all the way from the Gulf Coast. These were not mundane trade goods. They were materials of profound spiritual power, items whose value was tied to their distant origins and the difficult journeys required to obtain them. The movement of these objects implies the movement of people, and with them, the exchange of knowledge, stories, and technological innovations. This was a continent talking, its many voices meeting in the ceremonial plazas of the Ohio Valley. Yet, for all its geographic scale, the Hopewell phenomenon was remarkably peaceful. There is little evidence of fortified settlements or widespread conflict. Their power was not military but social and spiritual, rooted in a shared ceremonial life that transcended local differences. This makes their eventual decline all the more mysterious. Around the year 500 of the Common Era, the long-distance trade began to slow. The great earthworks saw fewer and fewer gatherings. The communities that formed this intricate web seemed to have gradually turned inward, their focus shifting to more local concerns. They were not destroyed by an outside force, but simply faded, their distinct identities slowly blending into the rising cultures of the Mississippian period that would follow. We are left with the beautiful, silent geometry of their earthworks and the scattered treasures within them. The the ghostly map of a connected continent whose many names and specific handshakes are forever lost to us. Along the high bluffs of the upper Mississippi River, the earth itself takes the form of great beasts. Here, in the woodlands of Wisconsin and Iowa, a bear with a long, curving body rests on a ridge. Nearby, a bird with outstretched wings seems ready to take flight from the hillside, while a powerful water panther coils near a spring. Between roughly 700 and 1100 years ago, a people we call the Effigy mound builders transformed these landscapes into a gallery of earthen art. Unlike the vast geometric enclosures of other cultures, these mounds were intimate and symbolic, built in the distinct shapes of animals and spirits. They were not solitary monuments, but appeared in groups, sometimes dozens of them clustered together on high ground overlooking the rivers that were the lifeblood of the region. To walk among them is to sense a deep connection to the living world. Each animal form was likely rich with meaning, serving as a clan totem that identified a family line, or representing a powerful spiritual guardian from the community's creation stories. The bear might have symbolized strength and healing, the bird a messenger to the upper world, and the water spirit a being of both danger and bounty from the depths. These mounds were a way of inscribing a spiritual map directly onto the terrain, linking the people to the specific places where these powers were felt most strongly. The very act of building an earthen panther near a certain marsh may have been a way to honor or appease the spirit of that place. We know these builders only by the beautiful, silent footprints they left behind. Their specific name for themselves, their language, and the exact stories associated with each effigy are a profound mystery. They were almost certainly the ancestors of later Native American tribes in the region, such as the Ho-Chunk, Iowa, and others, but the direct, unbroken line of knowledge connecting those living cultures to the specific intent behind each mound was fractured by the upheavals of later centuries. We are left with the poetry of the forms, but the verses are lost. The effigy mounds stand as a unique and deeply moving human impulse, not just to build, but to become one with the landscape, to weave belief into the very soil. We can see the words of their worldview, but the language to read them has drifted away on the river winds. Scattered along the southeastern coastline, great circles of shimmering white rise from the salt marshes. These are the shell rings, colossal loops built not from earth, but from the remains of countless meals. Some of these rings measure hundreds of feet across, their walls composed of oyster, clam, and mussel shells piled high by hands over 4,000 years ago. For a long time, the simplest explanation was that they were monumental middens, essentially ancient garbage dumps that accumulated over centuries of seasonal feasting. But the sheer scale and deliberate form of these rings tells a more complex story. They are not random piles of refuse. Many are near-perfect circles or precise semicircles, their symmetry suggesting intentional design rather than casual disposal. The material trapped within the shells complicates the garbage theory further. Archaeologists find the bones of deer and fish, broken tools, and even fragments of early pottery mixed into the layers. This was not just a place to dump shells, it was a place where people lived, worked, and celebrated together. The rings were likely the foundations for houses arranged in a circular village plan, creating a central plaza for community gatherings. This layout fostered a powerful sense of social unity, facing everyone inward toward a shared space. The rings might also have held a deeper, ceremonial purpose. Their circular form could have represented the cyclical nature of the seasons or the cosmos itself. Some researchers have even noted that the openings in the semicircular rings appear to align with celestial events like the solstice sunrise, transforming the space into a sacred calendar etched in shell. This points to a society with a sophisticated understanding of its world, both ecological and astronomical. Yet, the people who left behind these stunning structures are a complete enigma. We call them the archaic peoples of the Southeast, but this is just a broad label for a way of life. They existed long before the pottery styles that would later define cultures like the Swift Creek or the Mississippian, leaving no distinct cultural signature beyond the rings themselves. They had no known agriculture, yet they supported sizable, settled communities through a masterful exploitation of the rich coastal environment. The shell rings stand as a powerful challenge to old assumptions. They prove that monumentality does not require pyramids or palaces. It can be built from the humble, abundant materials of everyday life, transformed by communal effort into an enduring symbol. A society capable of such coordinated, long-term construction was clearly complex and organized, yet its name, its language, and its stories have been completely washed away by the tides of time. What does it mean that some of the earliest and most stable communities in ancient America are also the most anonymous? Perhaps these builders never truly vanished, but instead dissolved into the tapestry of new peoples. Across human history, the most common end for a culture is not abrupt extinction but a slow, generational blending. Through intermarriage, the steady rhythm of trade, or the forging of new alliances, distinct groups can gradually merge. A daughter from a mound-building community might marry a son from a powerful neighboring tribe. Their children would grow up speaking a new language, learning new stories, and practicing new ceremonies. Over time, the specific identity of the mother's people, their unique name for themselves, and the original meaning behind the great serpent they built would begin to fade. The earthworks themselves would remain, but their story would change. A ceremonial platform built by one culture might be reused centuries later by another as a chiefly residence, its original spiritual purpose forgotten and replaced with a new political meaning. The landscape was constantly being rewritten, not with ink, but with new layers of human experience. This natural process of cultural absorption presents a profound challenge for anyone seeking a single, simple origin story. How do you pin down the identity of a people when their greatest monuments were adopted and reinterpreted by their successors? The earthworks stand as landmarks in a much longer and more complex journey, one of continuous transformation. They are not tombstones marking an end, but rather signposts in the endless, flowing river of human connection and change. What we interpret as a disappearance may simply be a merging, a reminder that cultural boundaries have always been more permeable than the enduring earth they shape. These silent giants stir something ancient within us, a deep and primal curiosity. We stand before these vast earthworks and feel a powerful mixture of awe and a quiet, profound sadness. It is the pathos of distance, the emotional chasm that separates our bustling, documented world from their silent, forgotten one. We are confronted with the sheer weight of lost time, with the realization that entire sagas of human experience have faded without an echo. This challenges our modern belief that history is a neat, linear story we can fully recover. Instead, these monuments point to the vast, dark oceans of the past, where countless stories have sunk without a trace. This very unknowability is what fuels our imagination so intensely. When faced with a blank slate of this magnitude, the human mind rushes to fill it. This is why these sites become magnets for speculation, ranging from carefully reasoned archaeological hypotheses to grand, sweeping theories that connect them to lost continents or ancient global travelers. The mystery forces a humbling confrontation with the limits of our own knowledge. We have sent probes to other planets and peered to the edge of the observable universe, yet we cannot say for certain what a community in ancient Ohio called themselves or what prayer they whispered as they shaped a serpent from the soil. In our current era of relentless self-documentation, where every minor life event is captured and shared, the idea of a magnificent civilization building on such a scale and leaving no personal trace is almost incomprehensible. It compels us because it speaks to the ultimate fragility of human memory. Our own achievements, no matter how grand, are not guaranteed a place in the future. This emotional resonance, this blend of wonder and humility, is the timeless engine that drives both the public's fascination and the researcher's relentless quest. We are not just studying dirt and stone, we are searching for a reflection of ourselves in the silent, patient earth. This profound silence surrounding the earthworks demands a new kind of listening from those who study them. The very act of inquiry carries a deep ethical weight, for these are not merely archaeological sites to be dissected. For many contemporary indigenous peoples, these are sacred landscapes, places of prayer and ancestral memory. The history of archaeology itself is shadowed by a painful legacy, where sites were treated as mere curiosities, leading to the looting of artifacts and the disrespectful handling of human remains. External interpretations were often imposed, telling a story about the past that ignored the living voices connected to it. A vital shift is now underway, moving toward a model of community-based participatory research. In this approach, descendant communities are not simply consulted but are essential partners in the entire process, from planning and investigation to interpreting the findings. This collaborative path is not just the right thing to do, it is the most insightful. It opens doors to understanding that science alone cannot unlock. An archaeologist might document the precise alignment of a mound, but a tribal elder might share an oral tradition that explains its spiritual significance, revealing the symbolic meaning woven into the landscape. This partnership acknowledges a humbling truth that some knowledge is held not in the soil, but in the living memory and cultural continuity of a people. Embracing the idea that we may never fully know the original builder's name is in itself an act of profound respect. It is an acceptance of the limits of our methods and a recognition of the rights of others to steward their own heritage. The greatest discovery we can make at these silent monuments may not be a new fact, but a new relationship, one built on listening and shared reverence for a past that still speaks, if we are willing to hear it in a different way. The land itself held a memory of the weather, a hidden archive of past skies. Paleoclimatology, the science of reading these ancient environmental records, offers a critical key to understanding why the great earthworks fell silent. By analyzing subtle clues locked within ice cores, the growth rings of ancient trees, and the layered sediments of lake beds, scientists can reconstruct the climate these builders lived through. The story these proxies tell is often one of dramatic shifts. Periods of reliable rainfall and stable, warm temperatures frequently align with the golden ages of mound construction. A favorable climate meant bountiful harvests, creating the agricultural surplus needed to feed a large, non-farming workforce dedicated to moving earth for generations. This was the foundation upon which their monumental ambitions were built, but the climate was never a permanent promise. The same records revealed terrifying chapters of abrupt change. A series of severe, multi-decade droughts or a sudden shift to cooler temperatures could shatter that foundation. Imagine the slow, creeping dread as the rains failed year after year. Crops would wither in the fields, the forests that provided game would thin, and the rivers that served as highways for trade would grow shallow. This was not a single bad season, but a relentless pressure that squeezed the very life out of a society. Resource scarcity would have bred hunger, and hunger would have frayed the social fabric. The shared faith and common purpose that once motivated thousands to work together could dissolve into disputes over dwindling supplies. The great ceremonial centers, once symbols of unity and power, might have become focal points for tension, their construction halting as the people turned their energy toward mere survival. We see this pattern echoed across the ancient world. The decline of the great city of Cahokia, with its bustling plazas, correlates strongly with evidence of major droughts in the 14th century. Across the continent, the collapse of the magnificent classic Maya cities with their own towering temples also aligns with periods of intense aridity. It is crucial to understand that the climate itself did not simply erase these cultures. Instead, it acted as a powerful catalyst, amplifying any underlying political rivalries or spiritual uncertainties. A society already straining under its own complexity could be pushed past a breaking point by an uncooperative sky. This perspective transforms our view of the earthworks once more. They are not just monuments to human achievement, but also to our profound vulnerability. They stand as a testament to a delicate balance between a society's grand vision and the dynamic, often unpredictable, planet it called home. What does it mean that the ultimate fate of these colossal structures may have been written not in stone, but in the shifting patterns of the wind and rain? This pattern of profound silence echoes far beyond the earthen mounds of the Americas. On the Mediterranean islands of Malta, a culture flourished over 5,000 years ago, constructing colossal stone temples with intricate spiral carvings and sprawling underground burial chambers. Their architectural genius is undeniable, yet their name, their language, and the reasons for their eventual decline are a complete mystery. They left no decipherable records, only their silent, cyclopean architecture. Across the world, in the Indus Valley, an even grander civilization once thrived. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were marvels of urban planning, with standardized bricks, sophisticated water management systems, and bustling trade networks. They even developed a written script, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, hundreds of etched seals. Yet their language remains completely undeciphered, their voices locked away in symbols we cannot read. Their societal collapse a puzzle of shifting river courses and potential environmental shifts. Even the vibrant Minoans of Crete, with their breathtaking palace complexes and vivid frescoes, present a history we can only partially reconstruct. We know them through later Greek myths and the physical ruins they left behind, but their own linear script is still unread, leaving their original stories and the full meaning of their bull-leaping ceremonies just beyond our grasp. Placing the earthwork builders alongside these global examples reveals a sobering truth. The severing of cultural memory is not an anomaly, it is a recurring theme in the deep chapters of human history. It most frequently happens to societies that either did not develop a written language that we can understand, or whose fragile records, perhaps on papyrus or wood, simply did not survive the ravages of time and climate. What makes the earthwork builders uniquely poignant, however, is the very substance of their legacy. Unlike stone temples that defiantly resist the elements or indecipherable clay tablets that hint at a lost language, the earthworks are built from the land itself. Their mounds and ridges over centuries slowly erode and are reclaimed by grass and forest. They do not stand in stark opposition to nature, but instead seem to be in a slow, patient process of returning to it. This gentle blending back into the landscape feels like a powerful metaphor for their ultimate fate, a quiet, dignified return to the anonymity of the soil from which they so magnificently arose. The silent testimony of the Earth is now being translated through the language of atoms and algorithms. Genetic analysis is opening a remarkable new frontier, allowing us to read the stories written in ancient DNA. By studying the genetic material from human remains respectfully recovered from these sites, researchers can trace migration routes and biological connections across vast distances and centuries. This science can potentially link the builders of a particular mound complex to specific modern descendant communities, reconnecting severed threads of ancestry. Alongside this, stable isotope analysis acts as a chemical biography locked within bones. The subtle signatures of different elements can reveal what a person ate, whether their diet was based on corn or wild plants, and even if they spent their life in one place or traveled widely. This builds a deeply human picture of daily life, moving beyond the grand monuments to understand the individuals who carried the baskets of earth. We are learning not just about the societies, but about the people within them. At the same time, the digital revolution in surveying continues to accelerate. As LiDAR and other remote sensing tools become more accessible and powerful, they are scanning landscapes once thought to be fully mapped. It is almost certain that many more earthworks, currently camouflaged by dense forests or lying beneath modern farmlands and cities, will be revealed. Each new discovery is another piece of the grand puzzle, another shape emerging from the mist. Yet with this flood of new data, the very goal of the search is evolving. The quest is shifting from a desire for one simple answer to a deeper appreciation for the intricate diversity of these ancient societies. The future of this research lies not in filling every gap, but in learning to admire the beautiful complexity of the tapestry itself, even while accepting that some of its most vibrant threads may be lost to time forever. A single plow blade can erase in an afternoon what took a community generations to build. These earthworks are non-renewable cultural resources, incredibly vulnerable to the pressures of the modern world. Looting for artifacts shatters the sacred context of these places, leaving behind only holes in the ground and holes in our understanding. The steady expansion of agriculture slowly levels ancient embankments, while urban sprawl paves over entire ceremonial landscapes. Protecting these fragile monuments is a collective responsibility, a shared duty to the human story. International recognition plays a vital role in this effort. Organizations like UNESCO work to designate sites of outstanding universal value as World Heritage Sites. This status is more than an honorary title. It is a framework for protection that brings global attention and resources, helping to shield these places from immediate threats and manage them for the long term. Yet official protection alone is not enough. The true guardianship of these earthworks arises from public engagement. When a family walks the crest of the Serpent Mound or a student learns about the immense labor behind Poverty Point in a classroom, something profound happens. These are no longer abstract points on a map, but real places that spark wonder. A personal connection is forged, transforming a silent mound from a simple pile of dirt into a monument to human ingenuity and spirit. Museums play a crucial part in this, preserving and interpreting the artifacts that give these sites their voice, telling the story of the people behind the earth. Responsible tourism, where visitors tread lightly and follow guided paths, ensures that this curiosity does not become a new form of erosion. By engaging with these mysteries, the public becomes an active stakeholder in their survival. Every person who leaves with a sense of awe becomes an advocate, understanding that these enigmatic earthworks are a legacy for all of humanity. This broad base of support is the most durable preservation strategy of all, ensuring these ancient questions carved into the earth will continue to challenge and inspire our children's children. After centuries of inquiry and technological breakthroughs, we must face a humbling possibility. The full, vibrant story of these earthworks and the people who raised them may be permanently beyond our reach. This is not a failure of science or imagination, but a quiet acknowledgement of the true scale of deep time and the intricate, fragile nature of cultural memory. Some silences are woven too deeply into the past to be fully unraveled. Accepting this profound unknown is in itself a form of understanding. It teaches us a deep humility before the vastness of human history, reminding us that our knowledge will always have its boundaries. The ultimate value of these silent giants, therefore, might not be found in the definitive answers they surrender, but in the powerful questions they compel us to ask. They are permanent invitations to wonder about the nature of civilization itself, about how communities form and dissolve, and about the fleeting nature of identity against the enduring presence of the land. They challenge our modern obsession with documentation and certainty, forcing us to consider that history is not merely a record of what has been preserved, but also a vast, echoing landscape of all that has been lost. This duality, the known and the unknowable, is essential to the human story. These earthworks stand as majestic monuments not to our knowledge, but to our enduring wonder, reminding us that some mysteries are meant to be respected, not solved. Our journey ends where it began, standing before an earthwork that refuses to speak its name. From the great Serpent of Ohio to the geometric giants of the Amazon, we have walked in the footsteps of master builders whose identities have dissolved into the soil they shaped. These silent monuments are a testament to a humbling truth, that human history is a story told in fragments, with far more lost to time than will ever be recovered. The true legacy of these earthworks is not a list of kings or a deciphered language, but the profound questions they force us to ask about the rise and fall of societies, the fragility of memory, and the countless anonymous cultures whose hands built our world. Let their enduring presence inspire not frustration, but a deep sense of wonder and a renewed commitment to preserving the fragile echoes of all human achievement. For every mystery we solve, the land holds a dozen more, waiting patiently for a curious mind to listen. What stories will our own civilization leave behind, and what will the earth remember of us when we are gone? Share your thoughts on these enduring puzzles in the comments, and subscribe to keep exploring the hidden chapters of our shared past.